What's up, everyone? Tara Roberts here with Bleacher Report. Today, we are talking fantasy stars that you should trade away immediately. Now, I hope that week 3 treated you well. There were a ton of injuries. If you've got any questions about what to do with those injuries, because they were painful, right? We were hit with very little fantasy points from a couple of guys that really crushed our fantasy lineups. So if you have any questions about that, drop them in the chat. But now is the perfect time for us with these injuries and players bouncing back and players that have not bounced back the way that we want them to talk about trades, to see what kind of volatile players we can trade away, get out while you can, pivot away from others. As always, again, jump in the comments, let me know your thoughts, and if you got any questions, let's go ahead and start off here because we got a lot to talk about. Uh, we'll start off here with the positive of AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. These guys here had finally the bounce back week that we were looking for because it had been bleak from a past perspective. AJ Brown had 6 receptions on 10 targets, 109 yards, a touchdown. Devontae Smith, very good day in terms of volume there. Not the high yardage. He had 8 receptions on 9 targets, 60 yards, but also got a touchdown there. The Eagles, they woke up and they realized that, like, oh my gosh, maybe we should like target these elite receivers that we have. I don't know. We got like a good receiving core. Maybe we should do something about that. Crazy concept, right? But it worked. Good things happen when you let Jalen Hurts actually target his superstars there. Now they're on the trade list here because this is our sell high opportunity. If you can grab somebody and push them off onto somebody else, that is not the worst approach to take here, because while I love these guys, right, and they are elite receivers, we cannot trust them to continue to do this level of production, which is the level of production that we expect out of them. Maybe a little bit less for Devontae Smith, but that type of production is what we are looking for out of AJ Brown, that we drafted as our wide receiver 1 on a week-to-week basis, and we just can't trust them to be able to do that. Basically, what happened there is they ran into a buzzsaw defense in the Rams. And that Rams defense focused on shutting down Saquon Barkley. It worked. They did it. And once the Eagles said, okay, man, wow, this isn't working, we got to push through the air, they just ended up targeting the receivers there. And so this is the perfect opportunity for us to sell. AJ Brown is not the issue. He was never the issue. Devontae Smith is not an issue. Jalen Hurts isn't the issue either. It's comical that sometimes we say Jalen Hurts can't throw, as if prior years of volume and passing touchdowns on success of these receivers didn't exist. The problem is that the Eagles just want to run the ball. And it makes sense, right? They're Super Bowl champions. It worked out. Why would they not replicate the exact same thing that they did last year? And that is why we saw that dip in production for both of the receivers last year. They want to lean on Saquon when they can. So in games where defenses take the opportunity to say, hey, man, we're just going to try and shut down and focus all of our attention onto Saquon, we will have these boom games from our elite receivers, because when they get targets, when they get the ball downfield, they can, in fact, do something with it. It's just whether or not the game plan is for that to actually happen here. Right. So good thing is we discovered that you can, in fact, force them to throw, gave us a nice boom game and the opportunity to try and sell him while we can. Right. But again, this offense, it's fine overall. It's just, do you want to deal with the peaks and valleys of these receivers? You can probably predict it, but you're never going to be in a situation where you'll actively want to bench AJ Brown. So from that perspective, if you're not going to start him every single week, unfortunately, you got to try and move off of him. Let's jump to the chat right here because you guys are in here popping already. Let's see here. From El Selvig, Bijan, LOL, got to trade him while I can. This is the Atlanta offense is in a weird situation right now. I will say, if you want to sell Bijan, you can. Volume in terms of passing is still going to carry for him, right? Last week was obvious, or this past week, obviously week 3, underwhelming. But aside from that, he's typically been Bijan. I'm not panicked over him in any way, shape, or form. If you want to pivot off him, that's understandable, but by no means don't sell low on him. He's still the highest valued running back that we've got out there. From Colin Dunsack. Pickens, he is super boom bust. That's actually a really good one. I didn't put him on this list. Spoiler alert there. But if you want to take this opportunity to sell him at a peak, now I don't think it's like a panic sell, need to get out, because while we'll have some bust weeks, right? And a lot of times those bust weeks will come through frustration or lack of effort, because sometimes that just gets to him. The Cowboys are going to continue to push volume, and with CeeDee Lamb out for the next 3 to 4 weeks, that's the estimate there. Again, it's a high ankle sprain. Quite frankly, it could push out a couple weeks past that, but they're being very optimistic with that. You do have this nice little sell window where you can get a hefty little bag here for George Pickens if you want to. So it's not a panic sell in the way that a lot of these other guys here are, because we're going to get big volume for him over the next several weeks. But at the same time there, you can take the opportunity to flip it and get yourself a high-end running back if you want to, for sure. John 408, what should I do with Genty? Genty is not on this list because it's difficult to sell him at this point. The problem is that one, you're not in a terrible situation if you keep him because he is the RB1. There is no competition there. The problem there, though, is that we do have that lack of pass volume. We were expecting more of a 3-down back, receptions to be able to drive him as well. And they're involving the other backs there from a pass perspective. So that is cutting a little bit there. The Raiders' offensive line is an issue. We hope that as they progress, they can get more cohesive and push things a little bit better. There's no threat to his job. So he's not at the same level of the guys that we have on this list. But if you could sell him, not a bad thing, but he's kind of more so a trade target just because he is a solidified RB1 with no threat to lose his job. From J Rock in J25, literally every first round pick is underperforming there. Yeah, a little bit. We were better off just skipping ahead to the second round right now. And even then we've got some, your Lad McConkeys and whatnot that are not performing at the level that we wanted them to. So it's not the most ideal situation, right? But at the end of the day, we do still have hope with these guys in the first round. I am going to do one more here that is segueing perfectly to go into our next player on this list. A.L. Van Alstyne asks, what's your take on Brian Thomas Jr.? My take is that he's on this list. We got to get out of this situation if you can. Brian Thomas Jr. here at my number 2 trade opportunity here. Now, I'm not saying that he can't turn things around, right? Because when we see the level of production that he did last year, he was truly elite. It's hard to imagine someone going from the numbers that he produced in the back half of last season and dwindling down to nothing. That's just too large of a span to say it was a random blip. Aside from an injury situation, you just don't typically see that happen with a receiver putting out that level. But the problem is that he looks bad. And while we can say, hey, Trevor Lawrence, he's not thriving in this offense, he looks bad, and that is true. The problem is that it's not just Trevor Lawrence. A lot of this is on Brian Thomas Jr., and that is where we sit here and we're conflicted about what to do because we've got all of these factors to put in. Then we've kind of lost hope here to the one glimmer of hope that we were holding on to there, that volume was at least the thing that we could hold on to, right? Because, hey, he's getting targets. He's not being productive with them. He's got drops. We're not going to panic here because at the end of the day, he's a wide receiver 1, and we've got no threat from Travis Hunter, who has been, unfortunately, not a contributor on a very, very, very tiny scale there on offense. So from that perspective, you would think things would be going great for him, but we're coming off of a performance of reduced targets here. Just 6, caught 2 of them, 55 yards. This is a drastic shift from last season. 10 touchdowns last season. Thus far, he has none. Barely 100 receiving yards, just over that for a man that had well over 1,200 last season. That's a major issue in tracking for a massive reduction here. Now, we joke about that miraculous run last season being with Mac Jones. And while that is true, it's not as if Trevor and BTJ didn't have success together, right? So we can hold on to that. He had 5 touchdowns in 9 games with Trevor Lawrence. It was inconsistent, but there were big games. So we're seeing the inconsistency now. We're just not seeing the big games here. So there's some hope in it. And for that reason, because there is some hope and he is the wide receiver 1, you can get value out of him. Now, I'm not saying that you need to do a fire sell here. Don't sell him for bottom price because, quite frankly, this could all be pulled together by 2 weeks or so. They find the rhythm there. Trevor and him get the connection. The drops stop happening there for Brian Thomas Jr. That's a major problem because at this point, he's well underperforming. He's got the lowest PFF grade of any receiver. I'm sorry, not even any receiver, any Jags pass catcher, which is kind of crazy, right? He's got the highest drop rate on the team. So again, a lot of this is on him and stuff that he can fix. So we want to pivot away because if you got him and if you're 0-3 or 1-2 and you need some kind of pick-me-up, you can still parlay the fact that he is a high-volume receiver and a chance to turn around to the production that he had last year. So he can sell at a good value here and still get something out of it here. Don't sell him for bottom dollar, but try to pivot away from this if you're in a position where you're losing have a losing record and you need to turn things around and get actual volume. Moving on to my number three here. We're going to sell here on Bill Jacory Krosky Merritt. This is a good opportunity to just get out while you can. When we look at this Washington backfield and what they did in week three, it was a mystery coming in. We didn't know exactly what was going to happen. We did not get Bill starting on the first drive there as the starting running back. It was very weird. The split was incredibly even in this backfield. Now we have a sell opportunity here because he had a lot of hype going on for him coming into the season. And he got the goal line touchdown because Terry McLaurin was marked down at the one after that deep catch. That was good to see that goal line production there. But make no mistake, this is a committee, and it's not shocking that this is a committee. I want nothing to do with this Washington backfield. If you can take this opportunity where he got the touchdown and convince somebody and parlay it into anything, take that route because this offense is designed to be a committee. It was a committee last year, not because Brian Robinson Jr. wasn't good enough. It's a committee because they just want this to be a committee. Then it's a low upside committee because you also have Jaden Daniels as well. And for that matter, Marcus Mariota as well. So that's such an integral part of the run game. There's just way too much piece of the pie that everybody is taking here. When we look at the snap count, JCM had 23 snaps. Chris Rodriguez had 22 snaps. He had the most carries. That was Chris Rodriguez had the most carries with 11. Jeremy McNichols got 15 snaps. That's not that massive of a difference. He had that long breakaway touchdown here. Ultimately, I do think that JCM is more than likely the guy that has the better fantasy relevancy on a weekly basis. But the thought that he is going to pull away from this guys and make this all of a sudden a 3-down back, we can cross our fingers, but the likelihood of that happening is very slim. So there are lots of JCM truthers out there. You can take this as an opportunity to trade him if you can. From GQ Productions, time to trade Chase Brown. If you have a buyer, go ahead and do it. It's difficult to trade him right now because the production has bottomed out. So you're not buying or you're not selling high. You are selling at the rock bottom pricing there, unfortunately, with him. It's a bad situation there for the Bengals. We can hope, obviously, for more volume there for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Jamar Chase in particular is the wide receiver one. We do have to remember that this was a bad matchup. So Browning coming out there and absolutely bombing against a really solid, more than solid Minnesota defense is not shocking there. What is shocking is the level of production and lack of production that we are getting from Chase Brown, not just this past week, but overall. It's clear that the offensive line, we know it's bad. We knew it was bad coming in. We didn't know just how bad the run blocking would be. He is struggling out there, and I don't see a path for him to have success on the ground. He is going to have to thrive off pass volume, unfortunately. So if you can sell him 100%, but just be aware you are selling at rock bottom pricing, you might want to wait. This is not the ideal week to do it because we're coming off of that Minnesota defense. At the end of the day, he is the lead back. They're not going to pivot away. Now, we did see Taj Brooks and Samaje Perine, although Samaje Perine did get hurt. We did see them participating, but that was more so because it was a ungodly little blowout there. Chase Brown is still the lead back, so you can take that opportunity to just wait it out a second, wait for a better matchup, and sell at a little bit more of a peak because we're at the bottom right now. It's bad. Chat from Adam Denove 11. What's your take on Drake London? Drake London is not on this list because one, it's a bad time to sell him, right? We are coming in bottoming out right now. The perception on Michael Penix Jr. is absolutely awful. But I will say this is another situation of this is a young quarterback who we saw in a momentary spurt last season, who clearly needs to continue to develop. And I think we'll continue to see that as the season goes on. Drake London produced last year, not just like, you got to remember, Penix was a very short portion of last year, and London had a good overall year. The majority of that was with Kirk Cousins. The reality of us getting a pivot back to Kirk Cousins, I don't think that they're going to go that route. If they did, it wouldn't necessarily be the worst thing in the world for London, but I think Penix, we just have to give him some time to kind of figure out what to have here. But again, with London, we've got a good volume situation in wide receiver one. We just have to get into better situations. Also, let's also remember these matchups early on for Drake London have not been good, unfortunately. They had bad matchups in terms of secondaries. Playing against Carolina's secondary, they're elite. We just got to say that. Is their entire off defense elite? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But the secondary, You can't throw on him with your wide receiver ones, unfortunately. So we're giving him a little bit of a mea culpa here. These first several matchups, again, we had Minnesota as well. It's been bad, right? So we're giving a little bit of a leeway here till we get to better days. Expect some turnaround here as they develop. Less panic on Drake London because we have seen him for extended periods of time thrive. Let's do one more chat from R_E1. What to do with T. Higgins and Marvin Harrison Jr. T. Higgins again coming off of that. Again, with the Bengals, you're selling at bottom tier right now. I'm more of a buyer on Jamar. I'm not a buyer on T. Higgins because his production will be volatile. You cannot trust him at this point unless we get into good matchups. We don't have a lot of good matchups upcoming, so that's a bad thing. But I will say if you can trade him, I'm not opposed to that. With Marvin Harrison Jr., a lot of that is on him. We can make all the jokes about Kyler Murray all we want here, but watching that game, Kyler was fine. So at least we have that caveat where we're not panicking. Like Michael Penix Jr. is a quarterback problem there for Drake London. Trevor Lawrence is a quarterback problem there for Brian Thomas Jr. But when we're looking at Marvin Harrison Jr., Kyler Murray really isn't that bad of a problem. We want more volume tilted towards Marvin Harrison Jr., but first, he has to decide that he actually can catch the ball when he's wide open. So less of a panic there on him because his quarterback situation is not abysmal. There's still hope there. He's just got to pull it together. A lot of these guys seem to be very much so in their head. All right, moving on to our next player here on the list, we've got DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift is actually a very interesting trade candidate. I do a lot of Q&As. I get a lot of trade questions. I see a lot of trade proposals, and he is often mentioned here in people trying to target to him. So if you're in the market to get rid of DeAndre Swift and upgrade somewhere else, there are people that are suffering significantly at running back because they drafted RJ Harvey. They drafted Tyrone Tracy Jr. as their RB2, and they're struggling because they just flat out need an actual lead back. And DeAndre Swift is a lead back. He's not a productive lead back at this point. But there are a lot of people out there that are looking for people that are actually lead backs. And so you can really sell, despite the fact that we have not had a boom game for Swift, you are selling him at strong value here. Again, mediocre numbers, right? When we look at this last game was saved by production that he had. 13 carries, 33 yards, awful. Had 4 receptions for 45 yards, saved the day here. And it was a good matchup here. That is an issue. When your best performance thus far this season has been like 13 fantasy points and you're the lead back, we've got a problem. But we can mask that problem when it comes to trade offers because he's a lead back. That's cool. People are seeking to buy him here. So with all of the injuries that are happening and how these rookie running backs are underperforming, there's a market out there, a real market out there for a DeAndre Swift, and I suggest you jump onto it. Job security for him is not as locked in as you would think. As the Bears season progress, we can get into a situation where now granted, this was a good game, but we got to remember it was against Dallas here. But as the season progresses here, there's a reality where the leash is going to be a bit shorter on DeAndre Swift because Ben Johnson is already extremely familiar with DeAndre Swift. There's not going to be a whole bunch of second chances given if the production continues to be mediocre. He's already moved on from DeAndre Swift before. Kyle Monangai is the clear handcuff there. He jumped Roschon Johnson, who is non-existent, and he's a capable 3-down back here. They're continuing to push more workload. What's real and what's fake, it's hard to parse through because they've been in blowout games in both ways where he came in when they were getting destroyed by Detroit, and then this situation with Dallas as well, which ended up being more of a blowout. So we would like to see how this backfield operates in a game that's a little bit closer here. But again, teams will likely be playing from behind here. When we're looking at Chicago, not much opportunity on the ground here, and he's going to need to thrive and survive with receiving work. And when you look at all of the offensive weapons from a receiving perspective that they have, there's just a lot going on here. So the ceiling is kind of capped there because he can't have that Jahmyr Gibbs type of workload from a receiving perspective. Unfortunately, that just can't exist in this offense in here. Now moving on to our next one. Let's move on to DJ Moore here. Sometimes I like a good sell high. We've been talking about AJ Brown and Devontae Smith and selling them off of their high games here. Sometimes it's okay to sell somebody off of mediocre games that aren't as good as they actually appear. You just want to sell, not to have to deal with it. heading into the season, I wanted nothing to do with all of the Chicago pass catchers outside of Rome Odunze. And 3 weeks in, that's exactly what has happened here. Rome Odunze is the dominating wide receiver one in there, and DJ Moore, who we love, and he has been incredibly trustworthy no matter who the quarterback is, thriving sometimes with third string quarterbacks throwing him the ball. But in all those instances, he was the clear wide receiver one. That is unfortunately not the case. Rome Odunze is just dominating the offense. Target share is showing that it's tilting aggressively towards Rome Odunze. DJ Moore's target share has been below 20% in every single game. That's a major problem here. Now, you throw in the addition of Ben Johnson now scheming up plays to get Luther Burden more involved. We've got both of the tight ends that we have to be concerned about here. Moore is a player who last season we saw regularly targeted like 8 to 10 times. He's not even close to getting that level of production, and he is under pace for under 100 targets. That is the first time that we have seen that in his entire career since his rookie season. That's a major issue. Now, good news, you don't have to sell low and panic sell on him because Chicago is going to be chucking the ball all season. We just talked about that. They're going to be throwing the ball there. So from that perspective, you don't ever have to worry that he's going to get you 0 fantasy points. That's not a reality. He's got a nice solid floor of 8 to 12 fantasy points, probably averaging around there in 10, which is cool, but that's not where you drafted him to be. And that's not the kind of week to week basis production that you want out of your wide receiver one. Now, this week right here looks more like a high than it actually was. He finally got the touchdown. Caleb Williams looked fantastic. So maybe people are thinking in the game for Rome Odunze, he still was the leader, but it came down a little bit compared to prior weeks there. So maybe people will think, okay, maybe we got a little bit of promise here from DJ Moore. You've got obviously CeeDee Lamb going out with the injury. So if people are searching for these wide receivers, we had Malik Neighbors with what appeared to be a shoulder injury. So if people are searching and they need bodies, we've got bye weeks approaching as well. They could be looking for someone who has been incredibly reliable in the past, and that is DJ Moore. So I think he's a very good sell candidate right now. You don't have to get rid of him because he still has flex value on a weekly basis, but getting rid of him and upgrading either to another position would probably be the beneficial route for you. Going to the chat here real quick from K-Rose13, trade Rome and Chase Brown to get Gibbs. Your running backs are Brown, Benson, Monty, and Connor. Yeah, because right now, essentially, you've got, now good news is you handcuff Connor. So you've got Benson there, but you can't trust Brown on a weekly basis. And Monty's ceiling is what it is right there. So I'm okay with that. You hate to get rid of Rome because I do think that this is ultimately going to be a top 12 season for him at the position. But to upgrade to Gibbs, the Detroit offense has turned around, gelling a little bit more there, a lot more there compared to week one. So yeah, we feel a lot better about Gibbs. I'm okay with making this trade. That's a good way to get out of Chase Brown, attach him to somebody else, and so you can upgrade significantly at running back. From KV90, do we sell high on Jordan Mason since Jones will eventually come back? I don't think you have to. You can. But my perspective heading into the season was that Mason was the one that we wanted to target regardless, just because of one, the workload being so aggressive. Now, granted, you can't predict injuries, right? But the workload for Aaron Jones last season was the highest of his entire career. That's absolutely insane to do to a 30-year-old running back. So they brought in Jordan Mason with the purpose of alleviating a lot of that work there. Particularly with early downs and goal line opportunities. So I've always liked Jordan Mason. And as you know, once we do get Aaron Jones back, and that, could be a little bit more extended, remember that he'll be a 30-year-old running back coming back from a hamstring injury. You often won't get the same back that we originally had before. And he was already looking a little bit unproductive on the ground anyway. So I don't think you have to sell high on Jordan Mason. If you want to capitalize on it and flip to another position, that's perfectly fine. How about Kyren Williams from Mason Miller? Perfect one to talk about. I teetered back and forth on having him on this list here because we have a very clear role there for Blake Corum. The usage last week, the prior week from him, getting that goal line touchdown and actually being successful with it, that was a little bit of panic there. We got the good bounce back from Kyren this week, but at the end of the day, while he is dominating snap counts, it is a little bit worrisome to see that standalone value there that we're getting from Blake Corum and the fact that he's been so productive on the ground. He looks really good compared to how he had looked in prior seasons. So this one I think is you don't have to. sell him. But this one is a good sneaky sell high candidate. I do think he's still the RB1 there. So don't panic on it. But if you want to flip him, because we could get this inconsistent production on a week to week basis, the value in Kyren Williams was that he was the only one getting those goal line touches. If some of those are going to be going towards Blake Corum, that is a major issue there. Moving on to our sixth player here, we're going to go with Travis Kelce. I'm sorry. I know Travis Kelce always elicits a little bit of an emotional response for a lot of people because it's Travis Kelce here, but something is wrong. Something is extremely wrong with him and his production. Worthy went out very early in game one, so we're essentially at a full 3-game sample size of what should have been Travis Kelce stepping up as the lead target in an offense where the receivers that are left would legitimately be wide receivers at best on 99% of the other teams out there. And over this time period, these 3 games, Kelce has given us 10 receptions on 17 targets, just 130 something yards, a single touchdown there. That's a major, major issue. What we can expect here is that Worthy is going to be healthy at some point. Cross our fingers, he's able to play through it. Rashee Rice is coming back. What does Travis Kelce become at that point if he is not able to capitalize on volume in an offense that is led by Juju Smith-Schuster, Marquise Brown, and Tyquan Thornton? And when we look at Travis Kelce last season, there were plenty of games where he had volume. But the results from those volume games were very underwhelming, and that's kind of what we've grown to expect. He's just not the same player that he was 3 years ago. Touchdowns have gone down season after season. We had 3 last season, 5 the season before. There's a clear regression that is happening year over year. He's hit a wall here at his age, unfortunately. We're going off of pure volume, and the volume is not there, unfortunately, here. So pivoting away from Travis Kelce, not the easiest thing in the world, but at the very least here, I would do it before Xavier Worthy comes back. We've got a very, very short timeline here in terms of our opportunity to sell him off. So this is the perfect timing for him to be someone that you can move off of and then maybe go on to another streaming option there. Moving on to our last player here, number 7, it is DK Metcalf here. No dreadful games from DK Metcalf. It's just been a whole bunch of mediocrity from someone who was supposed to be hyper-targeted. 17 targets on the year compared to 15 by Calvin Austin. The target share is very even. Now, the good news here is that no matter how bad that it's getting in terms of this being a low-level upside, there's a clear target funnel exclusively in the wide receiver core to DK Metcalf and Calvin Austin. So we know that there's a level that he can't go beneath, right? He's going to have a very stable floor for us. Unfortunately, the ceiling is just not there. When you've got a quarterback that is throwing for less than 20 passes. It is almost as if it doesn't matter who's at quarterback because Rodgers absolutely did throw for volume last season. The Steelers offense just straight up does not want to have high pass volume, and that will not change no matter who is there. That means that basically what we can come to expect is a whole lot more of this, just mediocrity from DK Metcalf. But again, with all the injuries that are happening right now is a good time to sit here and say, hey, look, we got a wide receiver 1. He is getting touchdowns. We have, you can argue that there are potentially, solid matchups coming up where he can have higher upside as well. It's not the worst thing in the world to keep him, but this is not a player who is going to win your league for you. So this is a player that you can take a chance on, trade for a riskier player that can give you higher upside. So flip it to something that could have league winning upside for you. Going to the chat here before we close things out. From Be Real, trade Brian Thomas Jr. for Rome Odunze, 100%. Buy into Rome Odunze, the wide receiver 1 there. And again, we talked about the good thing there with that offense in Chicago is they're going to be continuing the aggressive pass volume there. From Carl Winshigh, Marvin Harrison Jr. for Keenan Allen. That one is tougher just because I believe in, I love Keenan Allen. I believe in Keenan Allen. That one is tougher because he is an aged receiver. 1-for-1 seems a bit off. I would like to get a little bit more value out of that for Marvin Harrison Jr. Keenan Allen as a trade target is awesome. But that's a rough pivot when you have to work in the factor that he is such an aged receiver, and unfortunately, we could have that increased risk of losing him throughout the season. From CC Charette 1, I have Benson, Genty, Kamara, and Bucky Irving. Do I keep them all or try to trade one? I would try to trade one. And from that perspective, it's probably easier. I would want to keep Bucky for sure. Maybe you take an opportunity here to sell high on Benson. The only thing there about you potentially keeping them is that he is going to be at a high volume situation. I don't see them integrating another running back. It would either be Benson if you want to sell high on him, or possibly Genty just to get out of the situation altogether. He's a lead back. You can still get good value out of him, especially again, kind of like a DeAndre Swift situation where people are just looking for somebody who has guaranteed workload there. From Dr. Chim, Kyron Williams for Brock Bowers, straight up worth it. I have Bijan, Javonte, and Connors. Vincent on my bench. It's a little bit much, but for Brock Bowers, perception wise, you're going to have to give up a decent amount. I don't hate that trade. I think the value is even enough to where that's okay. Bowers has had a little bit underwhelming start here. We got to remember that knee injury maybe hampering him just a little bit there. So we still have faith in him to be able to turn things around. I don't hate that trade, especially since you're so solid at running back. From M Dolphins 99, should I trade Chase now with Joe Burrow basically out for the season? You can, but again, it's not the most ideal situation in terms of this game specifically. With Chase, again, I would give it one more week. Minnesota was just a really rough matchup for Browning. He pushed volume in the past. So there is bounce back opportunity. We got to remember the week before, honestly, was probably the better opportunity to maybe trade him. We did have a big game out of him with Jake Browning for like 70% of the game there. So there are better times ahead specifically for Chase. Now, for Chase Brown, that's another story, right? But for Jamar Chase, I would wait a second and sell him at more of a peak there because this is, unless you can get a nice sweetheart offer there. But that wraps things up, guys. I appreciate you all tuning in. Just to recap here, we had AJ Brown and Devontae Smith selling coming off of that fantastic performance where we got that increased pass volume from the Eagles. Brian Thomas Jr. selling, trying to get out of it because it's a mess. And Jacksonville as a whole does not look fantastic. Honestly, the best looking players out of that offense are both the running backs. We might see them leaning a little bit heavier on the run game there. Selling on Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. This might be the highest we'll be able to get him. We got to remember that is a committee. Him taking over as the clear RB1, maybe in a little pipe dream, but unfortunately, I think the upside is really limited there. DeAndre Swift is a solid trade candidate because a lot of people are seeking significant value out of a true RB1 there, and he has that role for right now. So you can dangle him out there, get a good high upside trade there. Then we have DJ Moore. Again, Rome Odunze has taken over in that offense, but Moore still has good perception, so he's got solid trade value. Travis Kelce trying to get out of that before Xavier Worthy comes back, and at the very least, you got to get out before Rashee Rice comes back. And then DK Metcalf as well. If you're not able to get out from him, not the worst thing in the world. Again, floor is very solid. Upside is just unfortunately limited in that Pittsburgh offense. But that wraps things up, guys. Make sure that your alerts are on, by the way, because again, the breaking news is coming through constantly. Injuries, details, we gotta keep up with that because we're in the middle of fantasy season. Everything is coming in hot here, and you want to be in the know, especially when we're running waivers as well. So make sure you got that locked in. Again, make sure that you are locked in to the Fantasy Football Show. I'll be here with you every single week, giving you fantasy advice to help you win your league. And you can find me across all social media platforms at It's Terra Time, ITSTERATIME. Other than that, have a fantastic week. Good luck with your lineups. If you're closing out games strong this week with the Monday night games, I hope you win. And I will talk to you again next week.